Every grid has a geography of weakness. In the summer of 2003, that geography had a name: Cleveland-Akron. The area was not simply a load center. It was a load pocket, a region that depended on specific local sources of generation to hold its voltage up, because reactive power cannot travel far under heavy loading conditions. The anchor of that local support was Eastlake Unit 5, a 597-megawatt plant sitting on the shore of Lake Erie, west of Cleveland. Its primary job, beyond producing watts, was producing the reactive power that kept Cleveland area voltages from sagging. Alongside Eastlake, the Perry nuclear plant provided the only other significant in-area generation. Together, they were the voltage floor beneath the densely loaded urban network. This was not a new vulnerability. It was a documented one. In June 1994, with just 3 generators out on maintenance, reactive reserves in the Cleveland area fell so low that operators were forced to shed load to prevent voltage collapse. That episode left a mark. For years afterward, control area operators applied stringent voltage criteria precisely because they understood what this network could do when its margins eroded. But standards, like margins, can erode quietly. FirstEnergy's minimum acceptable transmission voltage criterion was set at 90%, a threshold that neighboring utilities considered inadequate. Those neighbors operated to a 95% floor. The gap between the two standards was not a footnote. It was incompatible by design, a lower bar applied to a system that history had already shown needed a higher one. Planning studies might have made this visible. They were not done. The long-term, multiple contingency assessments that would have mapped the system's true breaking points were never completed. And so, on August 14, 2003, the Cleveland-Akron area entered the day already carrying the lowest reactive power reserves of any control area in the region, a deficit that surrounding systems could not remedy, because reactive power obeys distance. What follows is not the story of a sudden failure. It is the story of a system that was already standing at the edge, and the sequence of events that removed one by one every reason it had left to stay there. FirstEnergy had not built rigorous contingency analysis into its practice. Before August 14, 2003, the utility had failed to conduct appropriate multiple contingency assessments, the systematic testing of how a second loss compounds the first. Its voltage analysis for the Ohio control area was similarly incomplete, and the operational criteria it used did not reflect the actual conditions under which voltage stability could be lost. When the Harding-Chamberlin line tripped at 1505 EDT, no contingency analysis followed, in part because FirstEnergy did not know the line had gone out of service at all. The result was that the system had already crossed a threshold that operators are trained to watch for and never cross. It was no longer N1 secure. One more loss would find no redundancy waiting to absorb it. FirstEnergy did not know that. FirstEnergy had not maintained adequate control of tree growth within its transmission rights-of-way. This was not a scattered oversight, it was a systemic one, and it would prove to be the common cause of outages on 3 345 kV transmission lines and at least one 138 kV line on August 14, 2003. Untrimmed vegetation made contact with energized lines. Each contact was a separate event. Each event drew from the same root failure. On the morning of August 14th, MISO's state estimator began failing. Starting around noon, it was effectively offline. The tool kept rejecting its own inputs. Engineers later described the system as saying, in effect, "All the data you are feeding me just isn't making sense. I can't find a state that matches all the inputs." The reason was simple and damning. Twice that day, transmission lines outside MISO's footprint had tripped offline. The state estimator had no automatic link to that information. Someone would have had to enter it by hand. No one did. Without a functioning state estimator, the contingency analysis tool that depends on it also went dark. MISO's real-time contingency analysis was offline on August 14th. The gap lasted nearly 4 hours. MISO's state estimator and real-time contingency analysis tools were effectively out of service from 12:15 EDT until 16:04 EDT, the entire window during which the Cleveland-Akron network was deteriorating. What that silence meant in practice was that no one at MISO was able to detect an N1 security violation developing inside First Energy's system, and no one issued the directives that might have prompted relief actions. The instruments built to see the cliff were blind. The voltage kept falling. Shortly after 14:14 EDT, First Energy's alarm and logging system in the control room failed and was not restored until after the blackout. The failure went unnoticed. No alert, no acknowledgement, because the very system that would have announced the problem was the system that had stopped working. It was not recognized until 14:41, 27 minutes during which operators believed they had eyes on the grid and did not. Then, in the window between 14:20 and 14:54, a second layer of protection collapsed. First Energy's emergency monitoring system, the tool designed to flag unsafe operating conditions and lines running beyond safe ratings, also failed repeatedly. The computers that should have been raising alarms were raising nothing. Operators sat at their consoles, watching screens that had quietly stopped telling the truth. Every line loss that followed, each one measurable, each one significant, passed through that room, unseen. The voltage was already decaying. No one there knew it. At 13:31 EDT, Eastlake Unit 5, a 597 megawatt generator, tripped and shut down automatically. It was not the first loss. Davis-Bess and Eastlake Unit 4 had already gone dark before it. Each departure had quietly narrowed the margin. Now the Cleveland-Akron area had lost 3 of its largest local sources of voltage support in a single morning. The trip of Eastlake Unit 5 reduced the available voltage support for the Cleveland-Akron area, and the additional power imports required to compensate drove line loadings higher across the regional network. The buffer between normal operation and instability had grown measurably thinner. The network now dependent on lines carrying more than they should, sustained by reactive power traveling farther than it ever should have needed to. At 15:05 EDT on August 14, 2003, the Eastern interconnection was electrically secure, capable of withstanding any one of more than 800 tested contingencies, including the very line that was about to fail. As afternoon temperatures rose and Cleveland drew more power, the Harding-Chamberlin 345 kilovolt line, a key artery for importing power into the area, sagged under its load. It contacted a tree limb within the right-of-way. The resulting short circuit was instantaneous. The protective relays monitoring the line recognized the fault immediately and tripped it offline. With the Harding-Chamberlin line gone, The system immediately exceeded emergency ratings on several remaining lines for 2 of the contingencies studied. It was no longer N1 secure. Under NERC operating policy, the network was required to return to a secure state within 30 minutes. Modeling shows it could not. What made the moment irreversible was not the physics alone. First Energy had no record of the trip. The loss of the Harding-Chamberlin line did not register as a known event. No contingency analysis was initiated. The operators did not know the margin was gone. When Harding-Chamberlin went down, the remaining high-voltage lines absorbed the load it had been carrying. That additional current caused them to heat, and heating caused them to sag. Roughly 30 minutes later, Hanna-Juniper sagged into a tree and tripped offline. 10 minutes after that, at approximately 1540, Star South Canton followed, sagging into a tree just as Hanna-Juniper had done. For Star South Canton, this was not an unfamiliar event. It had already tripped twice that day and been automatically restored each time by reclosing circuit breakers designed to re-energize a line once a fault clears. The third time, it did not come back. The fault did not clear. Star South Canton tripped and locked out. With 345 kilovolt arteries now severed, the burden of keeping Cleveland and Akron connected fell entirely to the underlying 138 kilovolt network, a system never intended to carry that weight alone. Each lost line had narrowed the path through which reactive power could flow, and reactive power is what holds voltage up. The network was no longer degrading. It was preparing to collapse. Between 3:40 and 4:05 in the afternoon, 16 138 kV transmission lines fault and trip offline, each one sagging under excess current until it contacts something below it. There is a window here, narrow but real. Emergency load shedding applied in time could have relieved the lines still standing. No such action is taken. The required emergency operating procedures, the manual load shedding program designed for exactly this kind of voltage decay, none of it is applied. Without that intervention, the cascade has nothing to stop it. At 16:05:57 EDT, the Sammis-Star 345 kV line trips. The last structural anchor of the Northern Ohio network is gone. The window that opened at 1546 has closed. What comes next is no longer a matter of decisions. It is a matter of physics. The Sammis-Star 345 kV line tripped at 16:05:57 EDT. Not because a fault had occurred on it, but because Zone 3 protective relays could no longer distinguish between a genuine fault and the abnormal conditions already consuming the network. High current flowing above the line's emergency rating, combined with voltage already deeply depressed by the overloads preceding it, produced an impedance reading that the relay interpreted as a remote fault somewhere downstream. The relay was not malfunctioning. It was doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect equipment from what looked electrically like a fault. The problem was that the grid had degraded to a state in which normal conditions and fault conditions had become indistinguishable. This was the signature failure mode propagating across the region. Zone 3 impedance relays operating on emergency conditions rather than actual faults. Each trip redistributing current onto lines already at their limits, and each redistribution making the next misoperation more likely. With the Sammis-Star line removed, the last substantial transmission corridor linking the Cleveland area to Southern Supply was severed. Power surged eastward into Pennsylvania, New York, and then Ontario in a counterclockwise path around Lake Erie. A massive reversal of flow that relays along the entire path read as fault after fault. Each of those relays tripped. Each trip produced the very power swings that caused the next relay to trip. The cascade had become self-sustaining, driven not by any new disturbance, but by the physics of a network that had lost the ability to absorb what was already in it. The abnormally low voltages in northern Ohio, combined with power swings propagating from events before the Sammis-Star trip, looked identical to fault conditions to Zone 3 impedance relays designed to sense real faults on transmission lines. They responded as they were built to respond and tripped line after line offline, each action making the next one more likely. As voltage collapsed, generators could not hold on. Michigan Cogeneration Venture lost 300 megawatts. Burger Units 3, 4, and 5 lost 355 megawatts. Kinder Morgan Units 3, 6, and 7 lost another 209 megawatts. Avon Lake Unit 7 lost 82 megawatts more. In total, 946 megawatts of generation disappeared from the Midwest in rapid succession. Not from a fault, but from under-voltage conditions the machines simply could not survive. Every generator that tripped reduced the reactive power available to support voltage. Lower voltage caused more relays to misread the network. More lines tripped. More generators followed. The interconnected system fractures into disconnected electrical islands, each one suddenly carrying the wrong balance of generation and load. On August 14, 2003, a cascading failure of the power grid plunged more than 50 million people into darkness across the Northeast United States and Canada. The most significant power outage in North American history, with an economic impact exceeding $10 billion. By the time the cascade was visible on control room screens, it was already self-sustaining. Operators had no opportunity to implement the mitigation measures that could have stopped it. The voltage cliff the engineers once modeled as a theoretical boundary had been crossed, silently, an hour before the lights went out. By the time the cascade was visible on control room screens, it was already self-sustaining. Operators had no opportunity to implement the mitigation measures that could have stopped it. Voltage stability is not a gradient, it is a state space, and state spaces have edges. But each line loss reshaped the boundary of that region. The space of recoverable states contracted with every trip, and the operators, without real-time visibility, could not see the walls closing. The Cleveland-Akron load pocket crossed from degraded to deterministic. Not slowly, not ambiguously, but at a moment when the accumulated loss of transmission capacity exceeded what reactive power reserves could compensate. After that threshold, protective relays were no longer a safety mechanism standing between the system and failure. They were participants in the failure, each one responding correctly to conditions that were themselves the product of the cascade. This is the lesson that voltage instability teaches with particular severity. The control authority does not disappear all at once. It is transferred incrementally from human operators to automatic systems, and finally to physics itself. The window at 1546 was not a warning. It was the last sentence in a negotiation. After it closed, there was nothing left to negotiate.